My name is Vanessa Hartley. I was 30 years old when I learned that love can rot quietly. Right in front of you. While still wearing the face of someone you once trusted, Chloe mocked me in my own house. Not outside. Not behind my back. Not in some college hallway where she could pretend it was just a joke. In my house, the house I designed, paid for, furnished, and open to the man I loved. She leaned back on my couch with a glass of my wine in her hand, smiled like she had been waiting all night for the perfect audience, and said, "You're just his ATM. Vanessa. Liam deserves someone who doesn't hold money over his head." The room went silent. People stopped chewing. Someone lowered their glass. Liam froze beside her, eyes shifting from Chloe to me, as if he was trying to decide which version of himself would survive the next 30 seconds. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply stood, looked Chloe straight in the eyes, and said, "Get out of my house." She laughed at first. Then I opened the door. That was when her smile died. And then Liam, the man whose tuition I had paid, the man who slept under my roof, the man who once told me I made him feel safe, stood up and said, "Vanessa, apologize to Chloe right now, or we're over." That was the moment everything inside me went still. Not cold, not cruel, clear. I smiled and said, "Over it is, sweetheart." They both stared at me like I had just misunderstood the script. Like I was supposed to beg. Like I was supposed to be grateful for the chance to keep funding my own humiliation. But they didn't understand one thing. I had built that house, and the woman who builds the house always knows where the switch is. I met Liam 3 years earlier, back when my life was quieter. I was already working as an architect, buried in deadlines, permits, client calls, and blueprints that followed me home even in my sleep. Liam was 20, a college sophomore, working part-time at a small cafe near my office. He had soft eyes, an easy smile, and this shy way of laughing like he was surprised anyone had noticed him. One rainy evening, he forgot his umbrella. I offered him a ride. That was how it started. Liam wasn't from money. His parents lived 2 towns over. His father repaired motorcycles, and his mother worked at a grocery store. He never acted ashamed of it, but I could see how tired he was. Tuition, rent, groceries, late shifts, early classes he was carrying. More than most people his age knew how to admit. I admired that he didn't whine. He pushed through. When we started dating, helping him felt natural. Dinner here, textbooks there, rent once when his paycheck came late. I had more than enough, and I cared about him. A year later, I asked him to move in. He hesitated. "I don't want to be a burden," he said. I remember touching his face and telling him, "You're not a burden. Focus on school. I'll handle the rest." For a while, we were happy. Quiet mornings, burned pancakes, movie nights, his socks in my laundry, his textbooks spread across my dining table. He used to kiss my shoulder when I worked late and say, "One day, I'll take care of you too." I believed him. Then Chloe came back. She was Liam's ex-girlfriend from college, though he always introduced her as just an old friend. The first time she came over, she had muddy boots, red lipstick, and the confidence of someone who had already decided she hated me. "Nice place," she said, looking around. "Must be easy to relax when money solves everything." I laughed it off. I shouldn't have. After that, Chloe started appearing more often. Study sessions, group projects, movie nights, casual hangouts that somehow always ended with food I paid for. Wine I bought. And Chloe making little comments about my life. You're so serious. Vanessa. Architects are control freaks. Right. Liam. You're too young to live like you're already married. At first, Liam defended me. Then he stopped. Then he started repeating her words. He dressed differently. Spent more. Stayed out later. New shoes. New phone. New attitude. When I asked about it, he shrugged and said, I'm just trying to enjoy life. Chloe says I should while I'm still young. Chloe says, those 2 words became a warning bell. Soon. My help wasn't kindness anymore. It was control. You like paying for everything. Liam told me one night. Because it makes you feel powerful. That one hurt, because I had never wanted him beneath me. I wanted him beside me, but Chloe kept feeding him poison. And Liam kept drinking it like truth. By the time my promotion dinner came around, I already knew something was wrong. I just didn't know that dinner would become the night I finally stopped pretending. The night of my promotion dinner was supposed to be simple. A few colleagues. A handful of close friends. Good food. Soft music. And a celebration for the promotion I'd worked years to earn. Nothing extravagant. Just peace. By late afternoon, the house smelled like rosemary chicken and garlic butter. Candles flickered along the dining table I'd designed myself. Liam moved around the kitchen, helping me arrange dessert plates. His sleeves rolled up, dark hair falling into his eyes. For a few fragile moments, he looked exactly like the man I'd fallen in love with. You nervous? He asked, brushing his shoulder against mine. I smiled. A little? You deserve this promotion, he said quietly. You've worked harder than anyone I know. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe the past few months had only been stress, that Chloe's influence wasn't permanent, that somewhere beneath the defensiveness and entitlement, Liam was still Liam. He wrapped his arms around my waist. I'm proud of you, he whispered, and for one dangerous second, I almost believed everything was going to be okay. Then the doorbell rang, halfway through appetizers. Liam's expression brightened immediately. That must be Chloe. Of course it was. I opened the door. She stood there wearing a fitted black jacket and an expression that looked suspiciously like amusement. Sorry I'm late, she said, breezing past me before I could respond. I had more interesting plans. She held up a bottle of wine. Thought I'd contribute. The label told me exactly how much effort she'd made. The cheapest bottle she could find. Not that I cared about the price. I cared about the performance. The way she announced herself. The way she looked around my home, as though she were evaluating a hotel she'd never pay for. Beautiful place. Chloe said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Still can't believe someone your age lives this well. Someone your age. There it was. The subtle jab. 30. As though I were ancient. As though stability itself were embarrassing. I closed the door behind her. Make yourself comfortable, I said evenly. Oh, don't worry, Chloe replied with a smile. I always do. The evening continued. Music drifted through the speakers. Colleagues congratulated me. Friends shared stories. Wine flowed. For a while, Chloe behaved, at least enough to create doubt. Maybe I had imagined the tension. Maybe I was being sensitive. Maybe. Vanessa. I looked up. Chloe raised her glass. You really went all out for this place. A few people smiled politely. It helps, she continued. glancing toward Liam. When your boyfriend doesn't have to worry about silly things like rent. Nervous laughter spread around the room. I noticed Liam smile weakly. Not because he agreed, because he didn't know how to disagree. I lifted my glass. I've been fortunate, I said simply. Very diplomatic answer. Chloe replied. Then she leaned back against my couch. You know, Liam, she said. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Most guys your age are traveling. Making mistakes. Figuring themselves out. She tilted her head. But I guess being taken care of has its advantages. The room quieted slightly. One of my coworkers suddenly became fascinated by her mashed potatoes. Another avoided eye contact altogether. I looked at Liam. He shifted uncomfortably. Clue. But she wasn't finished. I mean, she continued. Doesn't it ever bother you? Living in someone else's house. Losing your independence. Liam glanced toward me. Then, away. I don't know. He muttered. Sometimes. My chest tightened. Not because of Chloe. Because of him. Because this wasn't a joke anymore. This wasn't harmless teasing. These were conversations they'd clearly been having long before tonight. Conversations I had never been invited into. I've never stopped Liam from doing anything, I said calmly. Chloe shrugged. People don't need chains to feel trapped. Silence. Then she smiled. Oh. Relax. I'm kidding. No one laughed. She took another sip of wine. You know what's funny? Nobody answered. Everyone thinks this relationship is romantic. She looked directly at me. But honestly, it feels more like a sponsorship. I heard someone's fork hit their plate. Liam inhaled sharply. Chloe, he said quietly, but there was no conviction behind it. She looked at him. What? You've said it yourself. His eyes widened. You complain all the time. Chloe continued. Vanessa always pays. Vanessa always decides. Vanessa always has a plan. She turned toward me. Sounds exhausting. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. I stared at Liam. He looked horrified. Not because Chloe was lying, because she wasn't. His silence answered questions I'd stopped asking months ago. The late-night phone calls. The defensiveness. The resentment, disguised as independence. He had been discussing our relationship with the woman who once claimed to love him, and together, they had turned me into a villain. Chloe swirled her wine. Then she smiled. The cruelest smile I'd ever seen. Let's be honest. Vanessa. She raised her eyebrows. You're basically his ATM. The room froze. Liam deserves someone better. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. I looked around the dining room. At my colleagues. My friends. The people witnessing this humiliation unfold beneath the roof I'd built. Then I looked at Chloe. I stood. She laughed. Oh. Come on. Emet. Hargaze. Get out of my house. Her laughter faltered. What? You heard me. I walked toward the front door. You don't get to sit in my home. Insult me. Drink my wine. And stay another second. Chloe blinked, then scoffed. I was joking. I'm not. The room remained silent. She looked toward Liam, waiting, expecting. And that's when everything truly broke. Vanessa. Liam stood up, his face flushed. You're overreacting. I stared at him. Am I? She didn't mean it like that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She called me your ATM. She embarrassed me in front of everyone. It was a joke. A joke, I repeated. Liam's jaw tightened. You're making this into something bigger than it is. No, I said quietly. I'm finally seeing it for exactly what it is. His expression hardened. You always have to be right. There it was. Months of resentment condensed into one sentence. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The young man from the cafe. The boy who forgot his umbrella. The boyfriend who once kissed my shoulder while I worked. He seemed so far away. Chloe folded her arms. If Vanessa can't take a joke, enough. I said. I pointed toward the door. Leave. Chloe turned toward Liam. Liam. Then Liam looked me straight in the eyes and delivered the final blow. Apologize to Chloe right now. My heartbeat slowed. What? His voice sharpened. Apologize. You embarrassed her? I couldn't speak. He crossed his arms. And if you can't do that... His eyes held mine. Then, we're over. The entire room stopped breathing. I stared at the man I'd loved for 3 years. And suddenly, I felt nothing but clarity. I nodded once, then smiled. Over it is? Sweetheart. No one moved. For a heartbeat. The room forgot how to breathe. Liam stared at me as if he hadn't heard me correctly. Chloe's smug expression faltered. What? Liam asked. You heard me. I said. My voice remained calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that only arrives after grief has already done its work. You said if I didn't apologize, we were over. I looked directly into his eyes. So we're over? Vanessa. No. I raised a hand. The same hand that had signed contracts worth millions of dollars without trembling. The same hand that had sketched entire buildings from nothing. I won't apologize for refusing to be humiliated in my own home. The silence stretched. One of my coworkers quietly set down her wine glass. Another looked toward the door, clearly wishing he could disappear. Liam let out an incredulous laugh. You're serious? I tilted my head. You expected me to beg? His expression shifted. Confusion. Then, irritation. Then, something dangerously close to panic. You don't just throw away 3 years because of one argument. I almost smiled. One argument. As though Chloe hadn't spent months poisoning the foundation of our relationship. As though Liam hadn't stood beside her while she dismantled my dignity piece by piece. This isn't about tonight. I said softly. It's about every time you chose disrespect and called it honesty. Chloe scoffed. Oh. May God. Listen to yourself. I turned toward her. You should leave now. You're unbelievable. No. I replied. I've just finally stopped making excuses for people who hurt me. For the first time that evening. Chloe looked uncertain. She glanced at Liam. He looked back at her. Then at me. Vanessa, he said carefully, lowering his voice. Can we talk privately? No. Please. No. His face reddened. You're embarrassing me. A strange sound escaped me. A laugh. Soft. Disbelieving. You think this is embarrassing? I looked around the room. You let another woman insult me repeatedly in my own home. You demanded I apologize to her. And now you're worried about being embarrassed. His mouth opened, then closed. Chloe grabbed her purse. Come on. Liam. Liam. I continued quietly. If you walk out that door tonight with her, understand something. He froze. There won't be anything left to come back to. The warning hung in the air. I wasn't threatening him. I was informing him. His eyes widened. You wouldn't. I would. He searched my face, perhaps looking for hesitation, for tears, for the woman who had spent years smoothing over conflict because love required patience. But patience wasn't meant to survive betrayal indefinitely. Eventually, it transforms into self-respect. Chloe slipped her arm through his. We don't need this. Liam hesitated. I saw it. A flicker of uncertainty. The version of him that remembered Sunday mornings and shared laughter. The version that remembered I had never asked him to become someone else. Then Chloe squeezed his arm. And his pride made the decision his heart couldn't. He straightened. Fina. His voice shook. If that's how you want it? No. I said, this is how you wanted it. He flinched. Then, turned toward the door. Chloe lifted her chin triumphantly. They walked past me. Halfway there, Liam stopped. He looked back. I wondered if he might apologize, if he might finally understand what he was losing. Instead, he said quietly, "I never wanted your money." The ache that passed through me surprised me, because I remembered believing exactly that. I remembered the young man in the cafe, who insisted on splitting coffee bills he couldn't afford. The boy who'd once cried because I'd surprised him with textbooks he needed. "I know," I replied. "At least, I think you didn't." His eyes filled with something unreadable. Then Chloe tugged his sleeve, and he left. The front door clicked shut. The sound echoed through the house. No shouting, no broken dishes, no dramatic collapse, just silence. Heavy, final. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then my colleague Meredith stood. "Vanessa." I shook my head. "It's okay." "Are you sure?" No, I wasn't. But I also knew surviving heartbreak rarely looked graceful. "I will be." People began gathering coats, offering awkward condolences, hugging me carefully. No one asked whose side I was on. They had witnessed enough. Eventually, the house emptied. The candles had burned low. Half-finished wine glasses sat abandoned throughout the living room. A playlist continued softly in the background. Somehow unaware that an entire future had just died, I walked through the room slowly, straightening chairs, collecting plates, folding napkins, tiny acts of control, tiny reminders that life continued. I stopped beside the dining table, ran my fingertips across the polished wood. Every wall surrounding me existed because I had imagined it first. Every beam, every fixture, every detail. I built this life, and somewhere along the way, I had allowed someone else to convince me I should apologize for having built it well. Near midnight, I poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive bottle Chloe had ignored. I stood in front of the living room window. Outside, rain had started falling, small droplets tracing paths down the glass. 3 years. 3 years of memories. 3 years of believing love meant endless understanding. Had I missed the warning signs? Or had I simply refused to see them? Liam's changing attitude, the shopping, the defensiveness, the way gratitude slowly transformed into resentment, the late-night calls he'd silence whenever I entered the room. I had explained away every red flag. People change. I'd told myself, relationships evolve, stress passes. Love requires compromise. Maybe. But love wasn't supposed to require self-abandonment. Around 2 a.m, my phone lit up. Liam. I stared at the screen. Ignored it. It rang again. Then again. Finally, I answered. "Vanessa." His voice sounded smaller. "Please." I closed my eyes. "What?" Chloe was drunk. I said nothing. She didn't mean it. Still nothing. "You know how she gets." I almost laughed. The irony. He was still protecting her. "Even now. Can we talk?" "No. Please." I didn't mean what I said. My grip tightened around the phone. What part? The silence on the other end stretched. The apology. "You know I didn't mean it." I looked around the quiet house, at the home I'd spent years filling with love. "Liam," I said softly. "Do you know what hurt the most?" He didn't answer. It wasn't Chloe. It was watching the man I loved choose someone else's comfort over my dignity. He inhaled sharply. I was stressed. There it was. An excuse. Another shield. Another reason why none of this was truly his fault. "I see," I whispered, and as dawn slowly approached outside my windows, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. By sunrise, I had stopped mourning the relationship. I started reviewing the facts. Love had made me generous. Clarity made me organized. I sat at my kitchen island with my laptop open and a thick folder beside me. For months, I had ignored the practical side of what our relationship had become because reducing love to numbers felt cruel. Now, numbers were all I trusted. I opened the folder: tuition receipts, bank transfers, credit card statements, utility payments, car financing documents. Every contribution I'd made over the last 3 years, not because I had expected repayment, because I had always believed transparency mattered. I just never imagined I'd need proof to remind myself that generosity wasn't the same thing as obligation. Around 7 that evening, my phone rang again. Liam. This time, I answered immediately. Vanessa. His voice cracked. Can we please fix this? I leaned back in my chair. Do you know how much money I've spent supporting you since we met? Silence. Vanessa. No? You should hear it. I opened the folder. $18,000 in tuition. Nothing. $2,400 in books and supplies. His breathing changed. Approximately $900 a month toward groceries, gas, and personal expenses. I continued calmly. $1,200 for your laptop, the credit card, the utilities, the insurance payments. Liam. I didn't keep track because I wanted control. I swallowed. I kept helping because I loved you. His voice broke. You're making it sound like you bought me. Pain flickered through my chest. No. I invested in someone I believed was building a future beside me. I closed the folder. I never asked for repayment. I asked for respect. And last night, you showed me exactly how much of it I had. He began crying softly. I didn't think. No. I said, you didn't? I didn't want to embarrass Chloe. I let out a quiet laugh. But embarrassing me was acceptable. Silence. Vanessa. This isn't revenge. It's closure. After ending the call, I began making changes. Methodical, calm, permanent. I canceled the credit card under his authorized user access. I froze the shared checking account. I stopped the automatic tuition payments linked to my bank. The house remained legally mine. The utilities were in my name. The car I'd helped finance was registered through my accounts. I contacted the appropriate offices. By morning, everything had been updated. I didn't do it out of cruelty. I did it because love should never become a life sentence. Late the next afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened it. Liam stood there. His eyes were red. Dark circles framed them. His carefully styled appearance had vanished beneath exhaustion. He looked 20. Young, scared, human. For a dangerous moment, my heart remembered loving him. Then I remembered the dining room. Please, he whispered. He stepped inside the entryway. You can't do this. I already have. You promised you'd help me finish school. I promised I'd help while we were building a life together. He stared at me. You can't just stop caring. The accusation landed harder than anger would have. I looked at him carefully. Do you think caring means accepting betrayal? Tears filled his eyes. I made a mistake. You made choices. His shoulders collapsed. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I noticed his hands shaking. Where's Chloe? He looked away. She's staying with a friend. The pause told me everything. She's not helping. We're trying to figure things out. The bitterness surprised me. Not because Chloe had disappointed him, because part of him genuinely believed she wouldn't. I exhaled slowly. Liam. He looked up, hopefully. I truly wish you the best. His expression cracked. You don't mean that? I do. I don't hate you. That hurt him more than anger, because anger still implied attachment. You loved me. He whispered. I did. Pest, Tinze. The realization shattered whatever hope he'd carried to my doorstep. "I never wanted your money," he said weakly. I nodded. "I know." His eyes widened. "You do. I think the version of you I met didn't." A tear slipped down his cheek. "But somewhere along the way, all you started believing I owed you everything because I'd already given you so much." Neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, "I'm sorry." The apology arrived too late. Not because forgiveness was impossible, because trust had already died. I stepped back. "Goodbye, Liam." He stared at me, as if waiting for me to stop him, to ask him to stay, to choose him one last time. I didn't. Slowly, I closed the door. Softly, quietly. The house fell silent, but for the first time in months, it didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. Outside the front window, I watched Liam stand on the curb. He looked down at his phone. Made a call. A battered sedan eventually pulled up. Chlua, even from a distance. I could see them arguing. Her hands moved wildly. He ran both palms through his hair. Finally, she slammed the passenger door. The car sped away without him. He remained standing there alone, then eventually walked away. 2 weeks passed. Then 4. Life moved forward. I returned to work, focused on new projects, signed new contracts, celebrated the promotion I'd barely gotten to enjoy. The first unexpected reminder arrived through a phone call from Liam's college. The tuition payment hadn't processed. They wanted to verify whether there had been a banking error. There wasn't, I replied. The account had been closed. A month later, a mutual acquaintance mentioned Liam had withdrawn from classes. He'd taken a job at a clothing store. He was sharing rent with roommates he'd barely known before moving in. His social media changed too. Gone were the expensive dinners. Gone were the shopping bags. Gone were the carefully curated posts. Reality had replaced performance. As for Chloe, the city was smaller than people liked to pretend. Stories traveled. People talked. Apparently, she'd borrowed money from multiple friends. Apparently, repayment had never been her priority. Apparently, charm had expiration dates. Eventually, she disappeared from everyone's orbit. Karma rarely announces itself. Sometimes, it simply arrives. As for me, I learned how peaceful ordinary evenings could be. I rediscovered books I'd forgotten I owned. I cooked for one, took long baths, slept through entire nights. Sometimes I'd pass the cafe where I'd first met Liam. Different employees work there now. Different smiles. Different stories waiting to begin. Occasionally, I'd think about the boy who forgot his umbrella. Then I'd remember the man who demanded I apologize to someone who had humiliated me, and I'd understand they weren't the same person anymore. 6 months later, I came home to find an envelope beneath my front door. No return address, just my name. Inside was a folded piece of paper. 4 words. "You were right. I'm sorry. Liam." No explanations. No excusa. No requests. I stared at the note for a long time, then folded it carefully, placed it back inside the envelope, and tucked it into my desk drawer. Not as a keepsake, as a reminder. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine. I stood in the quiet living room, raised my glass toward the empty doorway where Liam and Chloe had once stood, demanding apologies I never owed. I smiled, not because they fell, not because I won, but because I finally understood something worth protecting: peace. They thought I was merely the woman with money, the woman they could lean on until they no longer needed her. They forgot one thing. I was the one who built the house, and the woman who builds it always knows where the switch is.